and we're now recording. And it is my pleasure to introduce our speaker this morning, Rick Pereira. And Rick is one of the leaders in the EFM, or Education for Ministry, is what that acronym stands for. And he's going to talk about the EFM program and share his experiences with us. And we're looking forward to that. Welcome, Rick. And
thank you, John. And thank you all for taking your time this morning and being here with me. I would like to start with a short prayer, please. The Lord be with you.
also with you.
Let us pray. O God, who caused all space to be and created all things, be present with us in these new spaces we use for distance learning. Bless and empower us as we use new technologies and devices for online learning. Give us patience with the process and with the technology as we seek to learn, grow, and expand our minds and perspectives of this world you love so much. In the name of the one who is present, even when we are distant. Amen. And that came from Katie, an EFM mentor at St. Andrew's Episcopal Church in Saratoga, California. And I think it's really great for EFM, for online learning. So I had to wrestle with, where do I start with this thing? So I think maybe a little bit of background might help. One of the things we do in EFM, by the way, every year is we write a spiritual autobiography. There are 4 years in the program. So each year the biography points us in a different direction. Talk about the people, talk about that, like that. So by way of spiritual autobiography, I was raised kind of in the Roman Church. I say kind of because my father, my great-grandfather in Portugal was a Roman priest, and he had a housekeeper, and they had a baby. So there's a history of a papal bull in my family, and I'm not a bastard, just so you know. And we didn't even have to pay for it, I don't think. Back in Europe in those days, it was common for a priest to have a family. And it was no big deal, really. Here in this country, of course, it was, but not over there. So by way of spiritual autobiography, I was familiar with the Catholic Church, with the Roman Church, excuse me. My father took me to church. That was our time together. And nobody else in the family went to church. So he would take me to church. And then he'd drop me at my grandmother's house. And he'd go home and fix breakfast for the family. And I would help my grandmother cook dinner because all of her 10 children were coming over. So that was my Sunday. But back then it was Latin. And it was my first experience with Latin. I had my Sunday Missal, I think it was called. And it was Latin on one side, English on the other. I was never an altar boy. And I never went to Sunday school. We didn't have Sunday school, but I went to church. That was it. I went to church. I didn't know much about it. I didn't understand it. I was very, very, very skeptical. St. Thomas was someone that I adored because he and I both doubted a lot. I would sit in church and say, if there really is a God, there's a statue of the Virgin Blessed Mother up there, wave your arm. And if I thought she waved, I'd say, do it again. So I was that kind of skeptic. My biggest remembrance about going to church during those years is I couldn't wait for Pentecost to end. I always asked my father every year, why are there so many weeks in Pentecost? And he never explained it to me. So it was like, it just drags on. I get tired of that green. So my dad died when I was 10. And I wasn't going to church anymore. And then a few years later, we moved to within a couple blocks of a Catholic church. And I had never received First Communion. And by that time, I was, I think, 12 or 13. So I was the tallest guy in the first communion class. And I started the training I started the education with the Baltimore Catechism, I think it was. And I had a lot of questions, and many of which the priest didn't answer to my satisfaction. So I had my communion and I kept going to church, that little church. And after a while, I just kind of stopped and didn't go to church for many years. Went to college. Didn't go to church while I was in college, although I did explore lots of different religions in college. I did a lot of reading. I took a comparative, Nothing satisfied me. So I just didn't do church until I did 12-step. And when I got sober, my sponsor said to me one day, you think God helped you get sober? And I said, oh, yeah. Good. Well, I think you owe God something, I think. And I think you should give him an hour a week and start going to church. So I did. That was in 74. I went back to the Roman church on the UC campus, and I couldn't handle the Romans anymore. They were too homophobic for me. They were too demanding, and they couldn't answer my questions. Plus, they made up a bunch of stuff I said. Sorry, Bill. So I just didn't do church for a long time, and then I got back into it. I went to the Catholic church, didn't like it. So one of my 12-step friends said, go to Unity. Not the Unitarian church, but the Unity church, which I did. And it was a wonderful, wonderful place for me to go because it started with me with meditating, because every service there was a meditation. So I moved to Tucson, and I went to the Unity church, and I hated it. So I found a Methodist church, St. Francis. It was the first reconciling congregation west of the Mississippi. A reconciling congregation at that time was one that actively ministered to the gay and lesbian community. And the rector, the pastor there in a Methodist church, was also a 12-step man, and introduced me to Pierre de Chardin, and I started reading that stuff, and I got really confused. And I met a man. He was a mortician. After a year and a half, we were going to get married. I wanted to get married in my church, and I had already asked my spiritual advisor, who was a woman, a woman priest, if she would do the ceremony. She met Mike. She agreed to do it. And the date that we wanted, because we didn't want to get married and go on vacation, get married and go on a trip, we decided we would have our ceremony, we would take a week, and then we'd go on our honeymoon after all the craziness was over. So I called the church, tried to make a reservation. The Saturday that we had to have was not available. And my friend, Mike, who has since passed, said, I've been in every church in town. I know what they're all like. I'm a mortician after all. So he said, I'll find us a church. And so he called me one day and he said, I think I found us a place, and I would like to show you the church after work today. Okay, great. I knew about, I was attending a St. Francis in the Hills. Down the road was St. Philip in the Hills, and it was an Episcopal church. And I had heard about it was kind of the hotty-toddy church in town, There was the people with the money that lived in the foothills. They came down to the town to go to church. At least that's what I thought. So he called the church, got an appointment for us to go see it. It was lovely. It was built. I was living in Tucson. It's in Spanish colonial. It has 10 chandeliers, and he took me inside, and it's beautiful grounds. And he said, well, honey, could you get married in this church? And I said, what queer wouldn't get married in this church? It's so gorgeous. So he called. We wanted to reserve the date. And the rector's secretary said, well, it's real interesting that you should call, because we have a gay and lesbian support group here that just started. And he's speaking to that group next Monday about same gender unions, which at that time was a way out subject in 1992. So Mike and I went, and we met, two men that became our very best friends, the music director and his husband, and the rector of the church, Roger Douglas. And he talked about same gender unions, and we talked about the fact that we wanted to do that. And at the end, he just came up to Mike and I and said, I would love for you to get married in our church. We're not even going to charge you the $700 rent, because I want to make a statement to our congregation that we're supportive of same gender unions. So we talked about it, prayed about it, and we decided, yes, we'd do that. So I kind of became an Episcopalian just by accident, but I'd always looked for a community rather than dogma, because I wanted to be in a spiritual community, and I've been very fortunate that that's been the case. Miss Holy Spirit sends me that way. So we started going to the Episcopal Church, and I went, well, it's just like the Romans, except it's in English. Oh no, they believe totally differently. I didn't know much about it. I knew about the history and how it got started by Henry and all that stuff, but I didn't know much else. So I started learning and listening about Episcopalians, and I decided it was a comfortable place for me to be. But I didn't know if I was really a Christian. That was 1993. I didn't know. And I didn't know what kind of Christian I was, because there are all types of us, as you well know. So I was struggling from 93, I don't know how many years anyway. And I thought about doing EFM then, because my church sponsored it there. But I had a job where I traveled all the time, and they all met during the day, during the workday. So I didn't do EFM. I just kind of had it here, not on the back burner, but it was always right here. Time passed. I came here. I had a job where I wasn't traveling. I was working at Sarasota Memorial. I was told to come to St. Boniface by my good friend who had the gay and lesbian support group in Tucson, Bill. His name was Bill Roberts. He was at that time the musical director at St. Philip's. In the meantime, he had become a deacon. And he knew all the music people in the Anglican Communion in the States. Not all of them, but anyway. He said, you got to go to St. Boniface and you got to meet who was the former music director whose name I can't remember, Doriel, who used to do this, the choir, Garth, before the Englishman. Seth, thank you. So I came to St. Boniface, and I went up and I introduced myself to Seth, and we started talking, and he said, well, here in Sarasota, we are known as that church. And I went, that's the right place for me. So I started coming to St. Boniface, and I started getting active, and I was doing my job, and the opportunity came, and I met Sandy, and I still thought about EFM, and the opportunity came around, and I said, I'm going to do EFM because I don't have to travel anymore. Because I was still confused about, am I a Christian? I left an important step out. 2010, I did a trip to the Holy Land. 2 weeks, led by the Diocese of John, what is it? The Diocese of Jordan or Syria, anyway, at the cathedral grounds, 2 weeks. And what I learned was, according to church history, this is where Jesus was buried. According to church history, and the whole time when somebody in the group would go, well, is this really the upper room? Our guy had always said, according to church history. So I started to think, maybe it's not so important if this was really the upper room, or it's not really important if this is the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, if this is where Christ is buried. And so I gave up all of that part of me that really demanded an answer to stuff. And I came out of that 2 weeks. I mean, I started the seminar the first night by saying, I'm here because I don't know if I'm a Christian. And if I do, I mean, if I am, what kind of Christian am I? So I just threw it out to the crowd. And when I finished that trip, I came back to Alexandria, and I met with my priest who had led the trip. And I said, well, it was wonderful and I love it. But it hasn't answered many of my questions. She said, well, what are you questioning? And I said, I'm not really sure. And so I came into EFM still in that position. I'm not really sure. In EFM, well, it's a 4-year study. First year, we study Old Testament. We read chunks of a lot of the Old Testament, and there's a companion book written talking about, why this part was written and who wrote it and what it was for, and So I learned a lot about. I never had much. I read the Old Testament once, but it was tough to struggle through. And I went, well, what does all this mean in the Old Testament? And a friend of mine was taking EFM in San Diego at the same time. And she said, well, the Old Testament's really only it's a great history of the Jews. That's all, it's just history. And I started looking at the Old Testament in that light. And boy, did it make a lot more sense to me when I looked at it in that light. So I'm kind of settling into this thing about, I think I might be a Christian, but I'm not sure. Second year, we study New Testament. We read New Testament. We read all the New Testament except for 2 books. And there's a companion book that talks about the New Testament. Who wrote it, when they wrote it, did they write it? Did somebody else write it? Why did they write it? Who's the audience they were? And so I started learning a lot about the New Testament as well. And I had done a lot of historic study. And I knew that, whatever version of the New Testament we have today is not the version that they had 2,000 years ago. It's been altered, it's been edited, it's been changed, but the basics haven't changed much, I think. I think I like the New Testament study more than the Old Testament study because I can connect with it, because I really, really can connect with Jesus's message. I had read Spong and a whole bunch of other stuff. I'm not sure that I believe that Jesus was the Son of God any more than I am, and all you are sons and daughters of God. And I started having a real difficult time with just saying the word God when I was studying New Testament. And so I switched and I said creator, and that made. Third year, church history. 1,400 pages of church history by an Englishman. The title of the book is The First Christianity, the First 3,000 Years. Because he starts with the Jews, the 2,000 years, and he lays the basis of how Christianity developed by looking at the Jews, and then looking at the Jews in Roman occupation, and looking at the Romans, and then the history of the church. And I kind of knew our history was a little spotty, but I started to discover, well, I don't believe in purgatory. Why would there be a purgatory? It doesn't make any sense to me. I don't believe in original sin. I don't believe my God would not do that. He would not punish me 2,000 years, 5,000, 10,000, 130,000 years later for Adam. I mean, it's a long story. So I just, I don't know about some of this. And I got really confused. Oh, wait, there was something that happened in year 2. I had a dear friend who's a retired priest. And I went to visit him in Tucson. He had been a spiritual advisor for me for a while. I said, David, I'm having a really hard time when I was doing New Testaments. Why is that? He said, I still don't know if I'm a Christian. He said, what are you reading? I said, he said, you're in year 2. Yes. You're doing New Testament. Yes. What are you reading this month? And I said, John. And he said, oh, no wonder you're confused. Don't read that. He said, next year, you are going to study church history. And you are not going to like it. You're going to become less of a Christian than you are now when you study church history. Just be prepared for that. But in year 4, you're going to study theology and you're going to become a Christian again. And he just laughed. And that's what happened to me. Year 3, I studied church history and I was familiar with some of it, but I sure wasn't familiar with all of it. So in year 4, Debbie can relate to this. She's in year 4 right now. It was the hardest thing for me to read about theology. I specifically avoided philosophy classes in college. I would not know. I don't want to do that stuff. And so studying theology that 4th year was rough for me. But I came to realize during 2 to 4, I came to realize that I am not really what I would call a Christian. I'm a follower of Jesus's message. I think we do a wonderful job of following Jesus's message at St. Boniface. It's the kind of community that I like to be involved in, where we have lots of ministries and lots of outreach and things like this for people. So I've settled into being a follower of Jesus, and I still have trouble with the creed, but I say it. And I have settled in, more than I ever have. I have settled into where I am spiritually and religiously as a result of EFM. So that's my background. That's my story. If you have questions about it, I'll be happy to answer them. It's an open book. But that's my story. And what happened to me in EFM was that I think one of the most important things that happened to me in EFM was that I just started to let go of stuff. I can't hang on to things from the past. I've got to keep moving to the future. I've got to be in the present. And EFM allowed me to put together a program that I use of spiritual practices. I had heard about prayer and I'd done prayer, of course. I had heard about meditation. I'd taken courses in meditation, but meditation wasn't a daily thing for me. I knew about writing and I knew about lots of Lectio Divino and all kinds of stuff, but I didn't have a really good, solid program upon which to depend. And that's what I've got from being here at St. Boniface and from EFM, that I now have a kind of routine, a routine. When I meditate, what I do when I get up, how I pray. I just recently asked to be on the weekly prayer group, so that I have a list of people that I've been praying for every week, which I love to do. So I carry it with me all the time. I never would have done that before EFM. So it's been a wonderful, wonderful trip for me, because I feel like I'm really solid in my relationship with the Creator. I'm really solid in my faith. And I really am working to follow Jesus's lead, to follow his message, to be that kind of a Christian every day. I don't do it as well as I could, but you know what? God forgives me anyway. And I have really come to accept that just in the last year, I have really come to accept the fact that, I mean, I had it in my head, but I didn't have it in my heart, that I, like you, am a beautiful child of God, created just the way I am. And that's all there is to it. This is me. This is who I am. If you have a difficulty with it, maybe you should work on it. I don't know, but I can't. Yeah. So EFM has just given me a great gift. And now that I'm co-mentoring, I get to continue doing EFM. So that's my story. That's where I've come. And so I'll talk a little bit about the program itself, if you don't mind. Let me find my screen. Where did it go? EFM is a 4-year program, as I said. It was started at the University of the South, Sewanee. Okay, John, I may have to call on you. Oh, share screen. There we go. I just want to share that part. No. Can you see that? Can you see that Swanee thing?
No, not at this point. You need to minimize your screen and bring it up
Yes,
on your desktop.
I did. Minimize my Zoom screen.
Yes, and then bring it up on your desktop so you've got it in Word or whatever.
Yep, it's on my desktop, but I can't get it, John.
Now enlarge your screen again.
My Zoom screen?
Yes. And then go down to share screen.
Go down to share screen. I got it. I can't see it. Where is it?
It's right on the bottom banner there.
Yeah.
Center.
Yeah.
And just click on the little arrow, the head.
So it's a 4-year pro. I'm going to just keep on talking while I'm doing this, John. Thank you. There. Ding. Did that work?
Well, once you've brought up your share screen, then you have to click on the blue button down on the lower.
There you go. Thank you. There. Can you see it now?
We can see that you've started to share your screen. There you go.
You got it?
Yes.
Are you seeing EFM?
We're seeing the summary break, living spiritual.
Yep. This is the website for EFM. If you want to explore what EFM is about, this is a great resource. Those of us that are in the program use this resource all the time because they have done such a beautiful job of providing information. So it's a 4-year program, I've explained to you. The odd thing I thought when I heard about it was all 4 years is like a 1-room schoolhouse. You're all in there together. I thought, well, that's really odd. But having experienced it, I can tell you, it's a great way to learn because every session I hear about the Old Testament from year 1 students. I hear about the New Testament from year 2 students. I hear about the church history from year 3 students. And I hear about what people think about theology. So I'm still doing EFM and I still discover stuff and I'm still learning stuff. So 4-year program, they provide there are 4 different themes. So the years are different. This year, you see that down in the corner where it says year C, the books are A, B, C, and D. Year C is living as a spiritually mature person. That was the one we did last year. Okay. So I want to find that other page that I did. There. So the basis of EFM is that we are all called to be ministers. No, we're all called to minister to people. And EFM, education for ministry, is not about learning to become a minister. It's not about becoming a priest or a deacon. It's about finding out what is your ministry in life. You know, in Corinthians, we find out we have all kinds of gifts. God gave people all different kinds of gifts. And EFM is really focused on discovering what your spiritual gifts are and deciding how you're going to use them. How are you going to use them in your church? How are you going to use them in your community? How are you going to use them in your social life? By the way, one of the things that I really discovered is that lots of times my actions do not coordinate well with what I say I believe. You know, I believe in not being abusive to people, but sometimes my humor could be abusive. So EFM helped me look at myself more closely and go, you know, that is not a behavior that I want to have. It's something that it doesn't fit with my philosophy. So why am I doing it? And so I've sorted out some stuff from my life because of EFM. And gosh, there's still a lot of sorting to do. And I'm 75 and I don't know if I'll live long enough to do it all. But I'm having a great time doing it. And I'm having a great time being a mentor in EFM because I think it's a fabulous program. If you're questioning, or if you're interested, or if you're inquisitive, as EFM is a wonderful, wonderful program. We meet during the year. Our group meets on Fridays in the morning. So we meet from about September to May. That's about a regular school year. It's supposed to be 34, 36 weeks. We usually do it in our group in a few weeks less because we combine a couple things. Participants take turns in leading the group. And it's really, the group really, really, really focuses on what they call theological reflection. Now, that's a term that I didn't understand. A lot of people don't understand. I decided I'm going to teach it. I'm going to talk about it in our class as it's simply meditating from a theological point of view. Start thinking about things from a theological point of view. We aren't taught, I wasn't ever taught to do that. I don't know if any of you were, but I wasn't taught to think theologically. I was taught to think rationally. Well, rational thinking gets you in a lot of trouble. So the focus in my life has shifted for sure. As a result of these wonderful 4 years. Part of me says, I wish I had done it sooner. And the other part of me says, you did it exactly when you were supposed to. So there, that's what I have to tell you. That's what I have to share with you about the program. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have. John, do you have any questions there?
Yes. First, Rick, why don't you stop sharing your screen?
Yeah.
Click on the
I'm going to share one more thing. I just remember something. I'm going to share one more thing. The core practices in EFM, I think, are interesting for you to know. What are they? Core practices in education for ministry is living in community. So we spend a lot of time in community. We spend a lot of time with each other, and we're encouraged to spend a lot of time in other communities. We have regular prayer and worship. Every session, we open and close with prayer. A couple times during the year, we have Eucharist. Theological reflection. Examining life through a theological lens is the central spiritual discipline in EFM. Okay, we study Christian tradition. And the other part that's important to me is vocational discernment. That's what EFM is really about. It's discovering your gifts and how are you going to choose to use them in your life. The gifts that I knew that I had that I've just enhanced, I teach. That's what I do. I just teach. I teach. I've been teaching all my life from the time I was in second grade. I teach. And as Rita will tell you, I have a great sense of humor. If you aren't a friend of mine on Facebook, we should become friends, and you could be also bothered by my daily puns. So one of my ministries in life is to use humor in my life, and so I'm doing stuff like that. I'm doing things like finding cartoons, making puns. I make puns all the time. Puns have become the bane of my existence practically. So there. All right, John, I'll stop sharing. That's it.
All right. Well, Rick, thank you so much for sharing your story. As I was listening to you, I am sure that you had been a terrific Celt back in 626, because when Augustine brought up the idea of original sin, the Celts just laughed at him. Pelagius just laughed and said, yes, how can that be? You're just don't know what you're talking about. But one of the things that I've taken from your history here is that all the way along you were a spiritual being. I was just beginning to recognize that it was there, and then how to talk about it. And that's what EFM has given you the tools to do.
It has, yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing it. Let me bring up participants, and we'll ask for people to open up and raise their hand if they have if you'd like to ask Rick a question or have a discussion, please go down under reactions and raise your hand. All right, Deb, you've raised your hand. Okay. You need to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Good. It's just brief. I am a fourth year student in this group. I started off as and first of all, thank you, Rick. I don't think I ever knew all that about you, but wonderful. And Rick is a most wonderful person to have in our group, and I'm glad he stayed on as a co-mentor. I joined the group because as a child, I didn't grow up in a religious setting, a theological setting. And so what I remembered about the Bible particularly was the stories, Daniel in the lion's den, Noah in the ark. And I thought that there's something I've really got to get cracking with this. And I never seemed to take time. I didn't take time to read the Bible, sit down and read the Bible. There was always something else I had to do with a family of 4 children and my husband in the Navy, traveling all over the place. So I never took time. So I joined the class, but I had no idea what I was getting into. I just thought I was going to study the Old Testament. And that was what I planned to do. And then I was going to leave the class. Well, the first reader's guide, the A is no, I've forgotten what that is. But in any event, the one that I had when I started the class was about multiculturalism. So the emphasis in the class following the set program for Old Testament for me was multiculturalism. And I thought, oh, that was really interesting because I'd lived overseas and I had been involved with other cultures. And I wrote my spiritual autobiography and I had something to talk about. And it was a sort of the spiritual autobiography was, I was born, I was raised, I went to school here, I did that. It was a very standard autobiography. So I was very naive when I began all of this. But I told my children about it and how much I enjoyed it. But they said, you have other things you should be doing. Don't spend all your time reading, because I was spending so much time on homework. But here I am, I'm in the 4th year. I just, you can't get away from it. And so not only do I recommend it to other people, I'm sure many of you have been in this course, and you probably have similar stories, but I think I have grown amazingly in this class, and I'd say even more so than studying that history book of 100,000 pages of, not 100, felt like it, 1,000 pages of 3,000 years of history. Now I'm enjoying being in my last year and being able to really think more rather than spout off dates and places. So I just want to say this is a marvelous course. I support it totally, and I'm so glad to be here joining you. I've been trying to come to this too, but somehow or other my Saturday mornings have gotten away from me also. So I'm glad to be here too. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much, Deb. And remember that we record these presentations and they're available on our CST website, so you can always catch them if you can't be here in person. A little plug for our work. Who else would like to raise their hand? So first of all, if you have a question, and Rita has raised her hand. Rita, go ahead.
First of all, thank you, Rick. I just love how the Spirit uses you and how you allow yourself to be used, which is a good thing. One of the, I'd like you to focus a little bit on the part about that kind of discerning what your ministry is. You know, how does that figure in the formation? Because I get the learning about the history of the theology, but I'm interested in what's the way that they help you discern, like, okay, we're called now to do this, or I'm called to do this.
That's a really, really, really great question, Rita. And I'm not even sure about the answer, but for me, the answer came through using I just lost it, theological reflection. And the questions that get presented in the program kind of push you in that direction. The program is focused to move you in that, to help you define what your gifts may be and work to find what do you know, as Sandy used to say to us, well, what are you going to do about it? That was the bottom line question. What are you going to do about it? And so people find out that they're going to do that. They make decisions to do things about it. We had a man in our class who was an insurance broker, and through maybe the first, I'm not sure about time, the first year or so, he was really unsure about it. Well, he heard about he knew about the celery fields, and he knew about there was a site next to the celery fields that was going to be sold and or developed. And he joined the Citizens Committee and attended board meetings, attended commissioner meetings, and he and this group of people came and presented to the county commissioners, this is how we think you should use this space. That was just a great thing, a great project for him to take because of how he viewed nature, because of how he worked with people. Unfortunately, the county commissioners didn't listen to the citizens, as they rarely do in this town, pardon me, but they decided that they're going to use that site for development. They're not going to just set it aside. And we know who's behind that. So anyway, that was what he discovered. We all sorted out, I think, in different ways, I think.
Thank you, Rita. One thought in discerning is that you have to know the God and trust the God that you know to be able to be open. And I think that's part of what EFM is helping the participants do.
It is, and John, I can tell you some of you know this story. So my most recent story is, as part of EFM, I decided last spring that I was going to spend the summer studying Julian of Norwich. because I was born on her feast day. I figured there's got to be a connection. There's no accident, you know. So I spent the summer learning more about her. And you know, what you all know about Julian of Norwich is all will be well and all shall be well. And so during the course of the summer, I was coming up on a renewal of my lease in September. And they raised my rent at my apartment over 30%. And I took a look around and I got, geez, rents are just going out of. So I need to do something. I need to find a place. Well, so I started looking. I decided I was going to buy a little place. I started looking. I had to be out by September 30th. September 1st came and went, and September 15th came and went, September 20th came and went. And I had movers and my house was getting packed up, but I had no clue what I was going to do. And people around me were panicking. I didn't panic. I just went, you know, she's right. All will be well. Holy Spirit is always taking care of me. So let's see. I have to look at my calendar. The 30th. The Thursday before the 30th. So that was a week ago, I think, 2 weeks ago. I got a call from a neighbor, my ex-neighbor, and he said, I have talked to our friend Don in Canada. Don owns this place where I'm staying. And the Canadians haven't been down here for over a year. So I called him and said, I thought maybe that you would be interested in renting his place. And he said, I would never rent to Rick Ferreira. No, won't happen. He can stay in my place. So he's let me have this great place, 2 bedrooms and my pool, just like a house I used to live in when I first moved here. And it just came right before I needed it. My life has always been like that. I'm a Taurus. I'm supposed to be the financial wizard of the whole complex. And you know, I don't have a lot of money, but I generate wealth. I generate generosity, and that's all that matters. You know, I just trusted that Holy Spirit was going to provide me with what I needed, and here I am. I don't know how long I'll be here. I don't know how long I can stay, but I'm continuing to now look for a piece of property without a whole bunch of pressure, which has been nice. So
Thank you.
I just trust.
Dorielle, you have your hand raised.
Yes, I just wanted to say thank you to Rick for sharing his story. It was very inspirational. And I had done EFM years ago when Sandy first started as our supporter. And so it's been many years. And I thought I knew the Old Testament because I had read a lot of it. I remember as a child having a book with Old Testament stories. So those stories were all familiar, but it really opened it up. I learned so much more. And then the New Testament made me feel closer in my heart to God. And it's amazing because in your story, you can see where God works in mysterious ways. He has been there all your life, and he has always been putting you in the right places at the right time. And I believe the same has happened for me and for my husband in his recent illness. You know, there's a saying that God makes a way out of nowhere, and he did make a way for us, and he's healed him. He's doing so much better, and it makes your faith stronger. It makes you trust more, and you still question,
Yeah.
but it makes you stronger. So thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
And I
Thank
hope
you.
some others will do EFM because it really is worthwhile. And that 2,000 years of history, they introduced that when they changed the curriculum. And it was my 3rd year. And we went through this book with a tooth comb. And when we were finished, they said, you didn't have to do it that way. It was just for a reference,
Yes,
but we'd already done that. So thank you again.
you're welcome, Doriel.
Thank you, Doriel. Anyone else? And Bill, go ahead. Need to unmute.
There. I'm Bill Vanderheiden, and I want to thank Rick and all of you really for inviting me into your meeting this morning and to hear a more elaborate version of Ricky's life than I picked up in the bits and pieces when I and my partner first met him at the Church of the Purple Rhino. So
That was our private club.
that's right. So over the past 5 years, it's been bits and pieces, but this morning he sort of like tied it all together into this beautiful stream that others of you have already commented on. And through Rick, we have met dozens of people through his graced interactions with so many people in the church and beside the church and outside the church. So thank you again. And thank you, Rick, for letting me hear this and share the love with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Is there anyone else who would like to ask a question? And Donna, go ahead.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Rick, for sharing your life story as it relates to EFM and also for the rest of your share about EFM. I have a question. I've been doing a lot of study over the past 3 years and mainly and 2 years in particular. And I'd like to know what are would you name 2 or 3 of the supplemental texts that EFM recommends, just to get a flavor of text and the authors of some of the supplements that you
Fact, yes. Let me see. I tried to pull this up from the website. Let's see. This is the list from the for 4 years of EFM.
Mhm.
Okay. We are in we're in year 1. We're doing volume A. We're reading a book called The Dream of God by Velma Dozier. We have every year we have 2 interim books. Besides our regular study, the whole group reads the same book.
Mhm.
Okay. Let's see. Year A, we'll call it year A, B, C, and D. A is living faithfully in your world. B is pointing toward living faithfully, as Debbie mentioned, in a multicultural world.
Mhm.
Year C is living as a spiritually mature Christian. And D is living into a journey with God. Okay. In year A, we read The Church Cracked Open. In year B, we read Reading the Bible from the Margins. In year C, Beyond a Binary God.
Mhm.
And The Cross and the Lynching Tree. And D, Jesus and the Disinherited and the 4-Vision Quest of Jesus. Those are the extra readings.
Mhm.
In year 1, they read the Hebrew Bible, a book by John Collins. That's the, okay. Year 2, they read the New Testament, a book by Mark Allen Powell. That is the book that I mentioned earlier. Year 3, they read McCullough, 1,400 pages. Actually, year 3, you should get the audio and listen to it. And then in year 4 in theology, Debbie has a lot of reading to do. You just read Ford, Theology, A Brief History, Mysteries of Faith, The Christian Moral Life by Timothy Sedgwick, and My Neighbor's Faith by Jennifer. My Neighbor's Faith is just a great book. It's about how a bunch of little segments, little stories about people meeting someone of a different faith, either at work, at school, socially, wherever, and how they came to become friends. So does that help? I can send you the list. It's also on the website.
Okay, I can go to the website and look.
It's on the website. Yeah.
Helps. Some of those selections, for example, the Howard Thurman selection,
Yes.
bridges nicely to the Sacred Ground Circles course that I took this year.
Oh, great. Yes. Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Donna. Speaking of Velma Dozier, have you ever read her Eighth Day of Creation?
Yes, I have. Yes.
Great.
Many of those books were written by teachers at different Episcopal theological seminaries. Some weren't, but yeah.
Yeah. Any other questions or thoughts?
Recording in progress.
Oh,
Michael?
We're back. John,
Yes.
I had lost connection there for a while. So I wanted to just see where we are.
All right. You're going to need to mute yourself because you're echoing.
Okay.
And there we go. Now, we've gone through and talked about and had people talking with Rick and just enjoying the discussions. And I think we're at a point now, Michael, if you want to share anything before we close, that would be terrific.
Yeah. Rick, thank you again for sharing your story and putting the qualities and the core content of EFM into a personal spirit.
you froze
And
again.
yeah, Michael's, they're having trouble. Yes.
I hope they bring you a new router today.
Yeah. Rick, again, thank you so much.
You're welcome, John.
And we encourage all of you to look at our previous recordings of presentations that are available on the CST website. And our upcoming, I'm going to just share that briefly real quick. Then November, we have a discussion on St. Teresa of Avila. And then in December 11th, Jennifer is going to talk about music and how she prays. And then, as we've mentioned in January, J. Rock will be talking about relinquishing prayer. It's a form of prayer, of moving into silence, of dequieting of the mind. It doesn't mean we're not going to pray anymore. And just as Lectio Divina was first used by Benedictines as the form to move themselves into contemplative prayer, sounds like this form of relinquishing prayer, this process would be something along that line. So with that, I want to thank you all so much for being with us. You have a blessed day, and we look forward to seeing you next month.
Thank you.
Rick, thank you so much. Blessings.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank
Rick.
you. Thank
John.
you so much.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.